All right, this is me giving a rapid welcome back to Rapid TV. Thank you so much for sticking around with us. It's been quite a morning. We have been, we've had a lot of things packed up on the schedule for today. Of course, we did give you a few health tips that I am hoping that you picked up and will be using for your daily activities. Now, we also did give you the newspaper reviews. We picked a bit of human angle stories, and one that stood out to me will be that of the Lagos State government proposing for monthly rent payment. If you are just joining us, do not worry. You did not miss out a lot, but you did miss anyways. But we're back, and of course, we have a couple things lined up here for you today. Now, my bad, because throughout yesterday, I've been screaming International Day of the Boy Child. Cynthia has been talking about it. And this morning I came on air and I totally did not acknowledge that. Apologies. In fact, we have been talking about changing the narrative of how we look at the boy child and the kind of attention that we give to them. And so, sorry about that. But yes, happy International Day of the Boy Child to you, every single man listening through your cars, through your televisions, wherever you're listening to us from. Happy International Day of the Boy Child to you. Yes, we acknowledge you. Yes, we appreciate the efforts that you put in to ensure that we become better people, we have a better society. Very much appreciated. And now, the International Day of the Boy Child is celebrated on May 16th each year, and the day recognizes the importance of the well-being of boys and the challenges that they face, while also celebrating the positive aspects they bring to their communities and families. I also did have a very interesting, I understand, or I learned something very interesting today. And it said that unlike the International Day of the Girl Child, the International Day of the Boy Child is not recognized by the United Nations. And I'm thinking, this is what we are talking about. If we want to have a society that is balanced, where everyone feels valued, everyone feels loved and appreciated, we should give as much attention that we give to the girls, to the boys. Don't you agree with me?
Hi. So I do think I might be playing to the galley here, but I feel that the reason is because we've had situations or societies where boys were prioritized, and that's what brought a rise to the International Day of the Girl Child.
Okay.
And so if this was the reason why we had International Day of the Girl Child, yes, we need to catch up. We need to have that balance in society. But it's like saying someone who has already gone a bit further, if you now say the person who is behind is what do you call it, taken away from them, it might not be the full story. Yes. So, and there are a couple of international days that are not recognized officially by the United Nations, but they are as important and celebrated by many people as possible. So yeah.
All right. Of course, you have already seen that I have a very beautiful guest seated right here in the studio. And she is Ramatu Ada Ochekile. Did I get it right?
Ramatu Ada Ochekile.
Ochekilie. Thank you so much for joining us. She is the founder of Shades of Us. And of course, we were supposed to have this conversation about maternal mortality rate, but we thought to chip in a bit of the boys in there before we head on to the girls, because, the boys are important as the girls.
Very important, very important. I think if we as societies treat people equally, we will not even have these problems of having or the need to say like there's a day for the girl or the day for the boy. It is important that we treat people first as humans, which is the most important thing. And if you treat people as humans, boys and girls will be able to ensure that they have the best in life. And boys do need to catch up in terms of movement. I completely agree with you for that. Boys need to catch up. There's been a lot of push in terms of like training on empathy, training on improving our society, changing social norms that sometimes the boys have been left out on. And so it is important that we bring that catch up so that boys are able to grow with girls. I think it was in Singapore, they had something similar where the girls were educated for a while and the boys were left behind. And again, when women move, not just women, when people move a certain way, you want to date or marry people who are within that same
that
bracket with you. So a lot of women were leaving their men behind and choosing foreign men. So the government actually did do something interesting by ensuring that boys were covered as much as girls were covered, and together their country is what went from a third world country to becoming a first world country.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yes, and you did make mention of something, because I was talking about, oh, the boy child has been relegated many times, and you said it wouldn't be the full story because the need to have a girl child, the day for the girl child, came up from the attention that was given to the boys and less to the girls. Let's talk about that.
Well, it was normal to have boys go to school. Many families still today do not send their girls to school. They send their boys to school, and they believe that they don't need to put in enough effort for girls, so that because they would marry and go into some other family. Till today, it's a problem. So when you have boys already moving forward in society, there were jobs that were strictly for boys. Boys go to the university, engineering, for example, maritime, anything concerning maritime work was really reserved for boys. And when you had girls try to break into the field, it was a problem. Let's even look at the military. For the longest time, we didn't have girls in the military. So it was the norm. It was normal to have boys be educated, or to get the opportunities, or to go out, because again, our society believed that the boy was going to bring money and take care of the girl. So that's why, again, when we say the full story, is that why did the day of the girl come become such a big thing, is because there was a push for equality, right? And in trying to push for this equality, yes, I would admit there's been times when we have left the boys behind, in terms of like educating them on how we can change social norms, how we can change cultures. Many people don't like to hear, oh, we're changing cultures. Well, cultures have never been static. They've always been dynamic. I agree. So if we are able to bring boys and girls to the table on how to improve cultures, then we have a chance at a better society.
All right, let's have the statistics of the out-of-school boys displayed on the screen, so that we can have a clearer picture of what we're talking about. Because I mean, you see it like that statistics right there on the screen. You'd see the number of out-of-school boys in certain states or certain parts of Nigeria. This is just the Nigerian statistics now. Out-of-school boys across Nigeria in 2019. This is an EduCeleb report that was being put. It says 5 to 11 age range for primary school reduction in Nigeria. Out of school children, this is the number of people that are out of school, and the statistics as at 2019 said that we had a lot of boys out of school, much more than girls. Do you think this is as a result of someone having the opportunity to be a part of something and they refuse to do that? Because if that is the case, why then do they refuse? Even though they have the privilege of some of these things, why do they still refuse to partake in them?
I think especially starting in that 2019 that was shown, there's been a big culture shift in Nigeria, where education is no longer prioritized. So, and we have seen it since about early 2000s, but in the 2010s it became bigger. Now when people realized that, oh, they could, do some criminal activity, they started to care less and less for education. And not just from boys, because boys cannot, in many instances, cannot make decisions for their lives. It starts with their parents. What we are seeing now is there's a huge enrollment of boys in the scam, what do you call it, online fraud and all of that. There's a huge enrollment of boys in the schools that teach them how to go and be criminals. And who is going to enroll them there? Parents. I watched a very harrowing video of parents taking boys as early as 13 years to these supposed schools. I think there was a book by it's a Masobe book, I Do Not Come to You by Chance. I can't remember what the name of the author is. Very similar to what I'd seen the video of, and that those boys were being maltreated poorly, and their parents knew. The parents gave them the founders of these schools the right to do that. So there's a huge shift in the culture of wanting excellence through education, and parents are actually, in my view, parents are one of the biggest faults for this. And then there's also the fact that men, again, like you said, sometimes when people have opportunities, they take it for granted. We see what's happening in the US now. They're beginning to say, oh, they don't care about vaccines. And the fact is, because they have rich herd immunity, they think that vaccines are not important. We that we are here, that we know what happens, we still see people with polio, we still, with the effects of polio, we still see people dying from measles, yellow fever, and all of that. We know that vaccines are important. But sometimes, again, when people just think, oh, I have this opportunity, they really do take it for granted. And this is for boys now who are slightly older than people that their parents can control.
Yeah.
So there are many factors in our society that are affecting this shift, especially, and I love that you started from the 2019 statistics. That shift is so huge right now. You go to certain regions of the country, and it's across the country. You go and you see boys do not care. They tell you, waiting school they do, who school help, you know. So we are in a very bad place. Personally, I think so. Girls, on the other hand, don't have. They still think, oh, you know, I still have to go to school to
fight
some
for
extent.
it because
And we have people who, like me, trying to fight for girls who have never had the opportunity before. So number one, I would say it's parents, to be very honest, for the younger ones. Imagine enrolling your 13-year-old to go and learn about online fraud and things like that. That's a problem. And then for older boys, it's looking at societal pressure. If they're seeing their friends who is driving maybe a Lamborghini because he got, you know, he's doing, and he will want to live like that. And then there's the pressure that, you know, a lot of older boys, and I'm using the term older boys, not necessarily adults, not men in this case, are seeing that their young girls in their age range are going for older men who probably have more money and all of that. So there is that pressure to put money as the first thing, as opposed to actually getting an education, going through the process of finding yourself and finding the thing that you can contribute to society and all of that. So it's a huge problem. And I always say this, and I think I'm going to say it again. It's not a problem that can be solved by women, unfortunately. It's a problem that can be solved by men, because men listen to men. For the most part, men do not listen to women except their mothers. So young boys need to be taught that education still matters. Education is important. Education gives you opportunities that you may never ever consider in this life. Education allows you even look at the world and see problems and create solutions that can make you billionaires. It cannot happen if you're doing the fraudulent. The fraudulent part might give you some money, but it only goes so far for you. And again, I do not support anything that's wrong. So yeah, there's a lot that needs to be done.
All right. Lastly, on the boy child. Now we have seen this gap because, of course, the negligence on the part of parents in raising their boys have brought about we having the girls' day so that the girls can be protected from the boys by knowing their rights fully. But now we also have a case where, in fact, I was going through a certain report that said a lot of boys had suffered rape and domestic violence much more than girls have. But the issue is a lot of boys let this go unreported because of the culture of shame, especially for the boy child, because, you know, we have built such a wall or a fence around the boy child, letting them think that they are incapable of expressing emotions. And if at all they find themselves expressing such emotions, then they're not actually men. How do you think that we can bridge this gap? Because it's such a huge gap, and it's such a huge problem, if you ask me, because a lot of things happen because the foundation is rot. How do you think we can bridge this gap?
It's a very, very important question. Very important question, because like you said, the culture of shame allows abuse of boys very, very terribly. And the abuse is even glorified. Because if a nanny, for example, abuses a 11-year-old or 13-year-old, the boys will hail him. So it's different for girls in a way, because girls are shamed, but boys are praised for their abuse. So you now have that kind of situation where the boy feels that the abuse is okay. That's a big problem. That's that's like the major aspect that people follow. Then there is of course the rape of boys by same sex, and it's such a terrible problem. How can we bridge it? With my organization, we're doing active advocacy and awareness about this. We do not just say, okay, we're talking about the girls. Yes, we're centered on issues that affect girls, but we also talk about the boys. There's a film we had called Report It, where we're trying to encourage people who have been sexually abused to report this thing. There are channels that you can go through to report it. So we talked about stories of boys being abused, and even the actors who were in that film said they had not seen that
from that perspective.
They'd never even seen boys in their community report. So they were proud to be part of something that allowed them encourage other boys and men who had grown up with abuse to come out and report it. It's so important for us to remove that culture of shame, but not remove it completely. The culture of shame needs to be put on the abuser. We need to make the abuser feel the shame
Shift.
all of that. So we need to tell boys it's okay. It's okay to come out and say that I've been abused and there's nothing wrong with you. It does not negate the fact that you're a boy or a man. It doesn't change the fact that that is who you are. But who is the person who is wrong? The person who abuses you. Because as long as we keep the shame on the victim, we will continue to have a culture of silence that does not help anybody. So that's what, in our role, we try to do a lot of advocacy on that. There are many organizations too that I know, that I work with, that are also doing advocacy on that, to try and say, the shame is not yours. And they have, I was at an event yesterday, they launched a framework for sexual abuse, and it's for teenagers. So it was helping girls and boys to report any instance of sexual abuse. So there are many people who are working to ensure that we bridge this gap. But it's going to take a whole lot of work. It's not going to, because even you're talking about girls that are even talking about it now, it's still a problem.
Yes.
Talk more of the
boys that don't talk at all.
That don't talk about it. There is a lot of work to be done, but the first thing that we need to do as a people is to say the shame is not on you. It's okay. Like every time someone has told me I was sexually abused, the first thing I say is, I'm sorry that this has happened to you. Nothing you have done warranted this abuse to happen to you. And every time I see on the flip side someone who has been, you know, shown to be an abuser, we call that person out for what they are. Make sure you're calling them an abuser. Make sure you're calling them a rapist or whatever the word has to be. It has to be clearly spelled out that this person has done something wrong. Yes, they should go through corrective, what do you call it, go to prison and what have you. But you need to be, and that's why they have built the sexual abuse register, sexual offenders register list, to make sure that that shame doesn't stay with the victim, which abusers thrive on. There are many organizations, even the government is doing something in this regard.
Who would have thought that we plan to talk about the woman? But anyways, a lot of work still needs to be done. So many are, you know, still on the ground. People are still trying to, you know, process or promote this advocacy. So much needs to be done. And like she said, call them out for who they are. And the culture of shame, let it shift from the victim to the abuser. These are important things that we need to note as people. You don't need to have a boy child to learn these things, because you have that little boy in your environment that is being abused repeatedly. You have that child somewhere that you know your friend's nanny or something that is being abused. I feel like if we try to combat these things as a community, then the impact will be a lot more than an individual or just an organization trying to do that. Well, let's slide a bit into the conversation we have here for. Thank you so much again for chipping in on that.
It's good because part of our work includes working to help children and people who are underserved. So we were in the same place.
All right. Anyways, we want you to tell us about Shades of Us.
Okay, so we're a storytelling organization that uses the power of storytelling to address socio-economic issues. We do that through written, audio, visual, but we've done a lot of things through our mobile cinema where we are able to address these issues because people are visual. We like to see things, you know, if somebody is fighting now, all of us will probably run out, we'll forget the show is happening to go and see what's happening. And, you know, people are very visual. So we decided to make films to address various issues. Right now we have 6 films in the bucket. We've been able to do, I think we have 3 films that address consent, sexual consent. The first one was Report It, where we were able to say, go and report. If there is an abuse, report it. If we are able to start that process, that one step of reporting it, we are halfway through solving the problem, right? Another film was trying to address consent in terms of how consent can be revoked. In fact, we did 2 films from the male perspective and from the female perspective. Once consent is revoked, sexual activity needs to stop. And again, when we have premiered this at festivals, we had conversations where people say, I never saw it this way, and that makes me smile every time.
That's the aim.
That's the aim, right? And so mental health is another thing that we're so passionate about. We were able to do a film called The Dumps that addresses mental health crisis, people who commit suicide, and some of the suicidal ideations that make people choose suicide as the last option for them. We addressed that in one of our films, and the last 2 films were addressing period shame and poverty, and maternal and child death. So it's been really about addressing these issues and giving a view you know, something visual to people to see. It's easy to say maternal mortality. In fact, I was about to say maternal mortality, but I realized when you keep using all these big words, yes, we all know, you're educated, you know it, but sometimes it doesn't hit the person,
So
right?
let's strip the big words.
Mother and child death. You know,
Okay.
make it the simplest way, and that's what we try to do to show with our films. The last one, which is called Umi, addressed the fact that Nigeria is the country that has the highest, one of the highest mother and child deaths in the world.
Wow.
Nigeria it's such a huge problem. The possibility of a mother going into the hospital to give birth and come out alive. Every woman, every woman who comes out alive needs to thank God.
Absolutely.
If you worship, whatever way you worship, thank God. If your child comes out alive, is also a reason to be very grateful,
Yes.
because deaths are so common in Nigeria. It's such a huge problem, and as a result of that, I realized in trying to do my work, I realized one of the big problems was that women were not having access to health facilities, one, and even in the health facilities, they didn't have skilled birth attendants or doctors. Let's say there are no doctors. If there are skilled birth attendants, they'll be able to help the mother. But in many facilities, we do not have that. So our film addressed one of the problems. There are many other problems, but just one of them, which is access to health facilities. So what we discovered, trying to do the research for the film, was that very few communities have primary health care centers within a 2-kilometer radius. Meaning that many women have to trek long distances before they get. So imagine a 9-month-old pregnant, nine-month pregnant woman trekking long distances. So we did this film with the premise that she had to trek 10 kilometers, and that was a reality that I saw in Bauchi State. I saw in Sokoto State. Women were trekking very long distances before they saw in labor. And many of them would just decide to use their, you know, sisters. But again, there's so much I can know as a person. Yes, we have the culture, is in us, we know to give birth is, but many people die. It's so common. And many people die. And there was a time I was in Adamawa State. I saw this woman, you know, back her baby, it was just coming into the hospital. I saw her from far, like, you know, where she was a dot, and that dot gradually became bigger and bigger and bigger until she was a full human being. And she came to this primary health care center, and next thing, in 10-15 minutes, she was out. She wasn't crying, but her entire body was one of dejection. You could tell she was broken because the baby had died. She had given birth to the baby. The baby had died from where she was coming from. She thought that the hospital would be her last hope, maybe to revive, but the baby was already gone. Now, this is a woman who just gave birth, and let's know that once a woman gives birth, her entire body is in pain.
Yes.
She probably was suffering blood loss. I looked at her, and she walked again until she became a dot, and I realized this is so sad. I couldn't help at that point. I was a core member, but that image stuck with me for the longest time. And as a result, I put all of these things together to do the film called Umi, to address maternal mortality and to advocate to the government. Let's have functional healthcare systems in at least 2-kilometer radius. It's not something that is impossible. If we have proper functional healthcare systems in our communities, it will reduce the load on your secondary healthcare centers like your general hospitals and your tertiary healthcare centers like your teaching hospitals. So if we're able to do that, we might reduce the instances. There are other things that cause maternal deaths, mother's death and child death, but let's try and solve one at a time. And I'm actually glad that this current the current coordinating minister of health, that's one of the things he's actually working on. Again, I always say this, we may not agree politically, but we do agree on trying to solve this problem. So I do think that together we can reduce the instances, especially for this country that we are in.
All right. Well, a lot has been said, trying to digest some myself. But, you know, I think that behavioral change is one thing that we don't quite take serious in this part of the world. Because if something is consistently happening, it means that there needs to be a change in behavior. Also because these women who suffer these things, some of them do not know better. I think yesterday we had a bit of this conversation where we were talking about how most of these women do not have the requisite knowledge to be able to navigate situations like this. Now, there's only so much that you as an organization can do. There's only so much other organizations can do. How do you think these various organizations alongside the government can partner together to sensitize these people on what it means to be healthy during pregnancy?
So I always like to say that a lot has been done.
Okay.
To be very honest, there's been a shift in the needle.
Okay.
We just need to shift it a bit more, right?
Okay.
I used to work in an organization where one of the core things that was brought to women was they brought it to the community, sensitize. I don't like the word sensitize. They gave them the orientation, gave them awareness, let them know that they can save their lives.
Okay.
And what they did was they told the women, how can we help solve this problem? They said they had to walk long distances. So there was an emergency. They got the World Development Committee to get an emergency transport system.
Okay.
And it was your regular, like a keke, the bike in front, then put a big, and do you know that the number of deaths in the community reduced?
Wow.
Drastically. That's one thing that was just one change that was done, and deaths reduced. Let me give you another example. In the same, again, the last organization I worked with, the community had, again, lots of maternal deaths. They had this thing where they did women empowerment, and in the women empowerment, of course, we have many women empowerment groups, but what was different about this was to encourage the women to save money.
Okay.
But when they come to save the money and have their meetings, they were taught about antenatal care, child care, and as the women were learning foods you should eat, what are emergency or danger signs, what you should do for yourself and your child, how you should lie down, as simple as that. And the funny thing was, women were trained, and these women will create their own groups of 25 to 35 women and train other women.
Amazing.
Guess what happened? Maternal deaths reduced. That's another small thing that was done. Now, a third thing that was done with that organization was seeing that, because primary health care, again, in northern Nigeria, there's what they call kunya, which is shame, for lack of a better word, but it's not necessarily shame as a direct translation. It's a sense of modesty. That's what kunya is. So a sense of modesty.
Like, don't you have shame?
Yes, so, and women, as a result, were not, because of the kunya in that community, they were not able to actively, go to healthcare facilities where men were going to. So what the World Development Committee did by themselves, they created a wing specially for women, and hospital attendance increased and maternal deaths reduced. See, another thing that was done. Now, when we worked in Ebonyi State, again, we saw when the women empowerment groups were talking, teaching themselves, what did they do? The deaths reduced, especially from danger signs, because each state has its own peculiarity, right? So where you're talking kunya in northern Nigeria, in Ebonyi State, the thing that was a big problem was danger signs. Many women did not take danger signs seriously. So when they were educated on danger signs in pregnancy, they knew that if I see this, it may be, if I'm bleeding, if I'm spotting, I need to go to the antenatal. I need to go to the hospital. I need to go for antenatal services. If I give birth, the first milk from the mother, I need to give the child so that the baby has that colostrum that helps the baby. Again, improvement in the lives of people. So all the work I did in that organization was so inspiring to me. I always tell people I only work in organizations where it aligns with my personal beliefs, right? And so it was so inspiring to see all of that work being done. And then with my own work and with the work that a lot of people are doing, there's been a big shift in the needle. The problem is that you see shifting behaviors, as you have mentioned, is cost intensive. Because when you tell a woman that you should go for antenatal services, she says, okay, I'm going for antenatal services. When you look at Nigeria, minimum wage for people who work, minimum wage maybe 33,000. You now go to the hospital, they now tell you maybe card is 1,000. You need to buy some consumables, maybe 2,000 naira. When you compare that 3,000 naira I have to spend in the hospital and the 33,000 that I'm earning, it's a huge amount of money.
That's 10%.
That's 10%. It's a huge amount of money to spend. So there is the cost on the mother herself, who has to take care of herself. When we did classes on nutrition and we are teaching women about, eat right, some of them will say, I cannot even find food to eat. So we need to look at the reality of health services. That's where the government comes in, and that's where I really do hope that the plans of the health Ministry of Health actually comes to fruition, because if it works, the lives of Nigerian women would actually be improved. If you are able to provide services that, if I don't need to worry about consumables, if I go to the hospital, I don't need to worry about spending so much money to access good health care. And that's where insurance, I think the government is actually has mandated insurance for everybody. Insurance can help you, but we also need to know that some people may not be able to put that small amount of money that is the insurance. So if we improve the economy, all the story I'm saying is that if we improve the economy, people are more likely to improve their health care. They are more likely to improve their health-seeking behavior. They are more likely to change their behavior. If you tell them, oh, keep your community clean, they will most likely keep it and then prevent things like, say, Lassa fever that would then go and affect, you know, mother and child and what have you. If we're able to improve the economy, for many people right now, we talk. It goes into one ear and comes out the other. It doesn't even get processed because they are worrying about, where do I get my next meal? And that's why we need to address situations, address problems that are similar. Poverty affects healthcare. So if we address two of them together, we would reduce greatly the instance of mother and child death in this country.
All right, if you have been here, because I'm hoping that you have been, I mean, it's important knowledge that needs to be passed out to the public, and I feel like this behavioral change we're talking about, we don't have to leave everything for Shades of Us or the other NGOs that do this work of advocacy, or the government even. It starts with you and I. The little thing I see in my environment that I can change by just speaking about it, I should speak about it. You know, this culture of mind your business, I think this is what got us here in the first place. Because at the time where we were in a communal system of living, it was easier to spread knowledge. Because when one woman knows, she tells her community or her family of about 15, and then it spreads to other families, and we get to know this thing. So I think we should bring back that communal living a bit still.
But that's where you are doing an amazing work, because you're using your platform to inform millions of people at the same time. Certainly. That's where it's important that you keep doing your job, right? I always tell people, every time I'm on air, whether radio or TV, I always encourage the anchors, because it's easy to just pick a topic and say, no, it's just a topic. But it's educating the public and helping them make certain decisions for themselves. I grew up on radio culture, and I know how many people I listened to and made me want to be better because I listened to on-air personalities. So when your advocacy is addressing, you've talked about boy child today, you've talked about maternal health, and somebody somewhere has heard you and has said, you know what, maybe they picked the idea that, oh, the first yellowish breast milk that comes out, which is called colostrum, is very important for the child. Maybe that's the only thing that person has picked. Maybe another person has picked the idea that, okay, women should go to the hospital to give birth, right? Maybe somebody has said, okay, we need primary healthcare facilities in a 2-kilometer radius. Maybe I can build one in my community, because you have a vast range of people who are listening to you, who can change societies. Yes, I like the idea of communal living. It has its benefits and it has its advantages. Yes, but as a whole, we do need to care for each other, because if one woman is ill, it's all of us. If one thing is affecting a woman, so say electricity, as someone on my team wrote an article about how poor electricity affects neonatal, let me bring that, how no light affects newborn babies. And he talked about, address the statistics, did everything, and we're seeing that babies are dying because there's no light. You see, just a simple thing. So there are so many things that needs to be done, and they need to be done concurrently. Address poverty, address issue of power, address this, and there are certain things that will no longer happen. One death is too much. We always say this, one mother dying is too much. So if we all do our little bit, again, I'd like to tell the story of Nehemiah's wall. For those who read the Bible, it does say that when the Israelites were able to build just the one that is in front of them, and before you know what, they were able to now connect the walls. And it's one of my favorite stories because it showed communal action. Everybody just do the one that is in front of you. So I do advocacy through film. You're using media. Somebody might decide I want to build a primary health care center. Somebody might say I'm a doctor and I want to volunteer my time to ensure that some women do not die. Somebody can just say, you know what, I'm just even going to provide cotton wool for the healthcare center. And if we just do the one that is in front of us, that is within our reach, we would make our country a better country.
Certainly. Thank you so much. It's been quite an enlightening conversation for myself also here, because the statistics, can we have the statistics back on the screen? We saw a lot of those statistics that talked about maternal mortality rates, and most of the states are not looking good at all.
No state. If you read all of this reports, there's the DHS Demographic and Health Survey, it doesn't bode well for Nigeria. If you read all of the statistics there, it doesn't really bode well for Nigeria.
Like that is until 2023.
Yes.
We're seeing the statistics right there.
And I'm sure you got this information from the Demographic and Health Survey.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I mean, a lot, again, needs to be done, especially when it comes to the woman. But again, I want to encourage every woman out there to be very intentional about their maternal health. I said it yesterday and I'll say it again. One birth differs from the other birth.
Yeah.
So because I have 4 children, I want to have the 5th one. I don't need antenatal. That's absolutely false, because every pregnancy has its peculiarities. So don't assume that you know. If you cannot afford the private hospitals, go to primary health cares. If you cannot go to primary health cares, just go somewhere. Federal medical centers. These places at least are more affordable than what you have in some of these private hospitals. So access these facilities. Let it be that they didn't even attend to you in the first place, but do your bit by going there to ensure that you're okay. Danger signs, like she said, people are feeling some level of discomfort and that it will go, it will go.
You're spotting, you say, oh, it will go. Your heart rate, you all of a sudden your heart rate is very high. And then there's something called gestational diabetes. If you do not go to the hospital, it will not be, it cannot be found, right? And so there's so many things that can go wrong. And I love how you described it. Just because I've had 4 children does not mean that the 5th one is the same. Every pregnancy is different because you are different at every point of your pregnancy. So it's a very important thing that people should note. You, as a person, you are different at every point of your pregnancy. So you need to go to the hospital, have those sessions, let the doctor see you, come back home, dance. That would why some people don't want to do that dance. Go there and dance. There's a reason why you go to antenatal and they tell you to dance. It is very important to your health and the child's health. All right. So it's very, very important that we do that.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been my absolute pleasure having you here.
I really loved being on your show. Thank you.
We'll do this again. This is, of course, Ramatu Ada Ochekile. Did I get Ochekile? Apologies. And yes, we have been talking about both the boy child and maternal mortality health, and it's been an enlightening conversation for me, like I said, and I hope it's been the same for you over there. And this is Martha. Of course, you guys know that, and she is the founder of Shades of Us. Search her out, look up what they're doing, and whatever way you can support and partner, it will be important, because we need to get this message out there to the mothers and the family in general. We'll be heading out for a very short break, and when we get back, we'll be doing the little bits we have for the Rapid Dawn before we head out. Keep it locked in.